Today, I'm going to show you how to use Syncthing to sync Logseq graphs between two different computers. Syncthing could be used to sync any folder on your computer, and since Logseq graphs are just a folder, that makes it pretty easy to use with Syncthing. Before proceeding with this, you'll need to make sure that you have Logseq installed on both computers. I'm going to walk you through the process of installing and setting up Syncthing. I'm going to assume you've already got Logseq ready to go. This demonstration is going to be using a MacBook Pro and an iMac. You can use Syncthing on any device except iOS. Unfortunately, there's not a Syncthing platform for iOS. There is a program called fsync that I'm not as familiar with, but some people have reported works with Syncthing. If you have this Logseq graph on both computers already through another syncing method, you will need to unlink the graph on all but one of the computers and remove that. Here we have the syncthing.net website. This will be in the description. I like to download one of the integration ones at the top, either SyncTracer for Windows or Syncthing macOS for macOS. You have the base ones at the bottom, which provides just the basics, but the extended versions there at the top include things like a tray icon so that you can see the status of Syncthing as it's running on your computer. It also includes things like making sure it's hooked into auto start, like the daemons are hooked in so that they auto start for you. It simplifies a lot of the installation. If you're working in Linux, you can install Syncthing through whatever the package manager on your Linux device is. On my Arch Linux computer at home, I was able to find it pretty easy on the package manager. You could also find it through Yay or through whichever one you prefer. So that's the basics of that. After you've downloaded Syncthing and installed it, you're going to go ahead and open it up. On a Mac computer, it's going to ask you for permissions. Other computers may not have this particular step. And then you now have Syncthing installed and running on your computer. Up at the top, we can see here, that's the tray icon I was talking about. You can check the status, make sure that it's connected, that it's running, that it's not having any connect issues, and you can click Open. Open is going to take you to this page here on the internet. The whole interface with Syncthing is a browser interface. It's all based around a web interface. So that means that if you navigate to that page, localhost :8384 on port 8384, you can find everything there is about your Syncthing located there, even if you don't have the tray icon to get there. You can see here all of the information about this particular one. I haven't set up a password. In this particular case, I own this computer. No one else uses it. There's no convenient way for someone to access it, but I could set this up if I wanted to through the settings. You can see a lot of details about the device there. You can see also, as you look at this, a device ID. And if I click on that identification, it brings up this device identification. That QR code is everything that you need to know in order to install a link between two computers on Syncthing or via Syncthing on this device. So I can either copy paste that long code that's located there at the top, or I can scan the QR code. If you're going to do the code, I recommend you email it to yourself or something of that nature. In this case, this particular computer, Syncthing's not going to be used on. I don't mind if you guys see this. I've actually blocked it out on my work computer. So therefore, for security purposes, this is someone can send a request to that link and they would be able to send a request. Now, I have, sought to accept the request, as you're going to see, but this is a number that does identify your computer uniquely within Syncthing. Once you've downloaded that, you're going to go ahead and click Add Remote Device, which is going to bring you into this, and you're going to fill out this information. In the device ID, you're going to put there for Boromir is the name of my work laptop. Isildur is the name of the iMac that I'm syncing to. So right now we're looking at the screen on Isildur, and we're adding the connection to Boromir. The device ID I've blocked out, but you can see that there. And then the device name is Boromir. You can use whatever computer names you want to use. I'm a nerd, so I went with Lord of the Rings. The device ID I've typed in is that long thing that you saw just above the QR code, but the one from the computer, from the other computer. So that is the one that I see when I click the device identification on Boromir, not the one that I see when I click it on Isildur. So once I've set that up, We can ignore the sharing and advanced tools tabs. They generally are not necessary for anything with Logseq. You may find uses for them for other folder types, but not for anything with Logseq. Once you've done that, you'll see that it is still disconnected. This is because Boromir has not approved the connection yet. Until I approve the connection on Boromir, these two devices cannot talk to each other. So this is a security method. Even though you have seen the identification for Isildur, you can't actually connect to it until I approve that. So if I jump over to Boromir real quick, you'll see that I have a new device request. And I can either add the device, I can ignore it, or I can dismiss it. So I'll go ahead and click Add Device here, and that's going to add a connection between Isildur and Boromir. Now, once I click Save, you can see that they are connected but unused. You can see Isildur.local listed at the bottom, and it is connected but unused. You can see also the other devices that I have synced to this particular computer, this being my work laptop. And so that is the other two devices that are synced there, my phone and my home computer. So I've synced these, they are connected, but there's nothing being shared between these devices yet, because I have not actually told it what folders I want to sync. I'll need to now go back to Isildur and add the folder that I want to sync to Isildur. So here we can see that connection flip to connected but unused, also on Isildur. And so now the next step is I'm going to add a folder. I can type in the folder label, and in this case, that'll just be the name of the folder. If I were storing this where I usually store my Logseq Graphs, then that would be where it would be. It would just be right there in the root. I usually store it in the root of my home directory, but in this case, I've actually just accepted the default location, which is inside Documents by default. So I can check my graph here, and if I look at New Graph, I can see the location. If I go under All Graphs, it'll actually tell me. But I've already checked that for you, and you can see here in Finder, if I look in the Documents folder, there is the folder I want to share, New Graph. So it's Documents, New Graph. So I'm going to jump on over now to here, and in the folder path, just going to type in Documents. It's going to ask for permission because this is the first time I've run Syncthing and it's tried to access anything, any files on my computer. Then I can click New Graph from the selection there. And we give this folder a label. We're going to call this Logseq Graph just for convenience. For sharing, I'm going to go ahead and check Boromir right away. I don't have to do that, but it simplifies, saves us a step later. Then we're going to come to file versioning. And we're going to want to use the staggered file versioning here. What staggered file versioning does is this. Staggered file versioning is going to save time-stamped versions of the files as you go through. So for the first hour, it is going to save a new copy of the file every 30 seconds. So that means you're never going to lose more than 29 seconds of work, because at the moment when you realize it's broken, you can go back, you can fix it, right? After an hour, it starts keeping a copy every hour, right? So for a day, it keeps a copy every hour. Then for the first 30 days, it keeps a copy every day. And then finally, for the maximum age, which I've left at 365, it's going to keep one version every week, which means I have copies of all of my Logseq graph, every single file in it, going back every 30 seconds for the last hour, every hour for the last day, and every day for the last month, which is longer than the life of my graph at this point, and then every week going back until the end of the year, going back at 365 days. That'll be what'll be saved there. So that's going to allow me to go back in time. If I lose anything, I can go into that folder, which you can see the name of it there, SD versions. I can jump into there, I can find what's missing, and I can restore my data from that folder. So now that I've made those changes, set those things up, and finally in the advanced settings, you want to make sure watch for changes is checked. And then if you want, you can reduce the length of the full rescan interval. So watch for changes means it's going to be watching to see what files change. It shouldn't miss anything, but it's not impossible. But a full rescan is where it's going to go through the entire folder and check to make sure every single item on that folder is there and is up to date. So I've set that down to be every 10 minutes just to make sure that it is updated. By default, it's 1 hour. So now you can see that's published there. It is up to date. But now over here on Boromir, I have a request. Isildur.local wants to share a file. So I'm going to hit add. That's going to go ahead and add it. It brings up the same settings here. And I'm going to want to set the same settings on this computer that I set on the other one. If you see here, I could share to devices that are not connected. And this is something that's important to consider. Syncthing does not sync to any servers. There's no server involved in this. This is all peer-to-peer. So that means you need to make sure that whatever you're syncing is actually online at the same time. For example, you saw Aragorn was offline. Aragorn's my home computer. He's never online at the same time that Boromir is online because Boromir is my work computer, Aragorn's my home computer. Why would they both be on at the same time? Instead, I'm actually syncing via Frodo with those two. So my phone is Frodo. It's online all the time. So either one of those can push their changes up to Frodo, which is then going to push the change over to the other partner. And then if I ever do have my laptop at home for whatever reason and I'm working on both of them at the same time, then I can see those. You can see here I've made the changes and I've added this comment here. This is on computer 2. And then if I step off the page, it saves the page. And I come back over here and I jump over to Isildur now. And if we look on Isildur, you'll see it updates. The syncing goes. It's now up to date. And if I open up the graph, usually you will need to refresh or re-index in order to get it to show up. In this case, it was a very simple change. So the change occurred immediately, but it's preferable to just go ahead and resync just to be sure. And that is everything you need to know about using Logseq with Syncthing.